Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Evans, aka Starting Park Car here, and we have a fun episode for you guys today. A little bit of East and Main Series action today. We got the East Series review of Flat Rock, and we got the big home race for a lot of ARCA teams at Charlotte this weekend in the main division. It's going to be a big show for you guys today. We're going to try to get some more people in here real quick as I go through my little intro, and we'll get right into the action. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Start Park Car on Twitter. We just hit over 4,700 followers. Thanks again for the continued support. Can't believe that we even have that many. 5,000 is going to be here before you know it. And yes, your continued support means so much. Like and subscribe to the channel. We just hit nearly 1,140 subs. Thanks again for that. And yes, be sure to also check out the racingexperts.com for all NASCAR media related content. So let's get right into it, shall we? The ARCA Menards East Series Flat Rock, or I guess Dutch Boy Flat Rock 150 at the returning Flat Rock Speedway. It is one of the smallest racetracks on the ARCA circuit, and it really brings back a fun era of the ARCA series. You know, back in the late 90s when they would run literally at these bull ring type short tracks, you know, like smaller than half a mile racetracks. And it's racetracks like that, I feel like, that make the ARCA series, no matter which division, no matter how many cars you have, very entertaining. And it's one of the few types of tracks I feel like you can get by with having maybe a bad car count. And it's not to say that even ARCA races in the 90s had bad car counts. They didn't. But you could get away with maybe not the best type of racing on a short track because those guys were literally beating the crap out of each other every single lap. And even in this past race that we saw with only 16 cars and only probably 12 going the distance, we still had plenty of beating and banging and on-track activity and fun moments to talk about. And that's what I love. And if anything, that's what the ARCA series needs to stay with. The Flat Rock Speedway needs to stay. I'll say it right here first and foremost early in the show. Flat Rock not only needs to stay in the ARCA series, but I'm voting right now to put that track on the main series schedule for 2024. The race with only 16 cars was good. I'll say already was good. But if you put at least 25 of the main series division cars out there with a lot, all due respect to these series, a lot more competitive cars in the main division, you will get a way better race. And a race for the ages is how they like to call it. But yeah, we're here to talk about the East Series. We had 16 cars again, the East Series, you know, like usual this season. Struggling for car counts. It's just kind of been ever since they came back from COVID. It's like these series has just kind of struggled for car counts. We had 16 for this race, the biggest in the last couple of races. The new oddball entries we had here, Derek McGrew Jr. was in the 31, taking over for Rita Goulet. Ryan Roulette driving his own car under Andy Hillenberg. Dallas Fruet made his return to fast track. Jeff Smith, Brad Smith Motorsports, bringing 2 cars to this race. A rare East Series appearance by Will Kimmel. And Billy Venturini himself, 47 years old, coming out of retirement for this special one-off race. And yeah, it was pretty cool. We had some fun storylines definitely coming into this race. And, you know, we mentioned it on last week's show that this was one of those ARCA races that I couldn't predict. You couldn't predict the winner. And I always loved talking that because it's, you know, you guys remember the longtime viewers of the show remember a couple years ago, you know, when Ty Gibbs was in the series, we would pretty much just discuss who was going to race for second. We really didn't talk about who was going to win because it was kind of obvious. So yeah, these podcasts nowadays are a little bit more fun because you can't predict the winner. Obviously, we knew the 18 of Sawalich was going to be strong, but guys like Hingarani, Venturini, and Fenhouse, and I even threw in Zachary Tinkle as an underdog, they had all legitimate chances to win the race. All 16 cars did show up. All 16 cars did participate in practice. Was glad Jeff Smith. I knew Jeff Smith was not going to run a lot of laps in the actual race itself, but I was glad that Jeff Smith got at least 9 laps out there in the Ford. So he got to run a couple laps. I'm glad he didn't just go there to literally run 1 practice lap and 1 race lap. I'm glad he got actually out there to do some stuff. You know, and even though we talked about that, maybe the 28 would be the car to beat, I predicted that he would probably be the car to beat. It was quite surprising to see that in practice. Luke Fenhouse was only 5th quickest and over 3/10 off of what Sawalich and Hingarani were running. That was quite surprising because a lot of people, including myself on the show, predicted that the 28 of Luke Fenhaus would be the car to beat and actually picked him to win this race. Sawalich did win practice. Hingarani was second, probably one of his best E-Series performances of the whole year. Again, we'll get more into it when we get into the race. LeVar Scott was third. Billy Venturini was fourth. Luke Fenhaus, like I said, was sixth. Jeffrey McZink, definitely a little bit surprising after his poor performance at Toledo last year, actually showing some competitive level speed. But Jeffrey does run some local divisions at Flat Rock Speedway, so he does have previous experience, and that obviously helps. Zachary Tinkle, he's kind of the one of the faster cars, but also doesn't have the funding to unfortunately compete for wins. But they try their best, and I know he tries his best. Still seventh. And Will Kimmel, kind of the 8 competitive cars is kind of, I would put him. You had Tim Monroe, who was kind of in his own league. He was faster than cars, but he was also not really as quick as some. Glad Tim got to run the whole race again. Really, I would say he's your every man's driver. He drives the haulers, he drives the race cars, and sometimes he even drives the pit box to the pit box by pulling it. Unfortunately, we don't have those nice carts that IndyCar has. Other notes, Dallas, Brad, Moeller, Shear, and like I said, Jeff Smith were kind of rounding out the field. The starting parks that we had predicted tonight would be the 49, obviously. The 06, they were running the Toyota Dodge, so we knew they were going to pull in early, just getting some extra laps on the car before they eventually bring that car out for the main division later this year. But yeah, we knew about 13 cars were going to try to attempt the whole race. I don't understand in some ways. I wish the E-Series would adopt the West Series format, especially when we only have, 16 cars. Why not just have practice be qualifying as well? I like when the West Series does a practice qualifying same session for 90 minutes. I don't know why the E-Series doesn't do that. And frankly, I think the main division should do it too. Just have a 90-minute session for practice and qualifying. And whoever's the fastest at the end of that practice session is the pole sitter. That way teams have plenty of time to do practice runs, race runs, and then their qualifying runs. I would personally think that'd be a lot better, and it actually probably maybe even save some money. I don't know. But I think that would improve the series a lot. But qualifying showed a lot of the same, but with some difference. Sean Hingarani, I believe this is his first ARCA Menard Series East pole. Mike, hopefully not me corrected on that, but he was first. LeVar Scott was second. That was surprising. LeVar Scott, despite Rev, we know they're competitive, but Rev has not shown the best of speed this year in the East Division. So it's great to see them qualify second. But LeVar's run these bull ring type tracks in late models, so it's also not shocking. Luke Fenhaus was third. William Sawalich was fourth. Billy Venturini was sixth. The top 5 were literally separated by just over a tenth. So I'll give you an instance. We really had 5 cars who had a legitimate chance at this. The top 8 were separated by just half a second. Now, at a track like Flat Rock, though, that's still quite a bit. 15 of the 16 cars did take a qualifying lap. The 49 chose not to take a qualifying lap. We got into the actual race itself. And, the 15 looked dominant. Right out of the gate, the 15 took the lead, or I guess kept the lead. I guess he was a pole sitter. Kept the lead early in the race. We ran a couple laps, and then we had our first caution. Didn't really have a chance to see a replay. I don't know if Flow Racing showed a replay of it, but Derek McGrew Jr. in the 31, who we had hoped would show some more speed than maybe Rita Goulet has for the Rise Motorsports team. He did. I mean, he did. He definitely showed more speed than Rita did. But still, I know that 31 car is a good car. It's set up good. They got a good motor in there. Maybe it's just the rookie driver of Derek. He got faster throughout the weekend. That's what I will say. Compared Derek's first lap of practice to his last lap of practice, he definitely picked up over a second. But yeah, he brought out the first caution. Didn't hit anything, but pretty much tore the nose up a little bit and kind of ruined whatever he had left for the race. And, with obviously no mandatory tire changes, he also kind of killed his tires for what else he had left in the race. So we got back going green again. By this point, Jeff Smith, like I said, he only ran 1 lap and then he pulled off. I guess we'll go ahead and go through our starting parks. Dallas Freeway ran. Nate Moeller actually pulled off after 2 laps, but then he came back out to pass the 49 and then would come back out again under the next caution to pass the 01. So he kind of playing that game of cat and mouse. Dallas ran 18 laps before pulling off. Nate Moeller finally pulled off after 25 laps. Brad did not start and park in the race. It was kind of sad to see him bring out a caution on lap 35. We did see some interesting racing, though. While the 15 was pulling away from the field, the 6 made one of the best moves I've ever seen for third place, using the lap car. I believe I don't know if it was the 31 or the 48 of Brad as a pick, but shot right underneath the lap car, making the 18 take the long way around, and the 6 dove into the bottom. Like, that's a classic short track bull ring type move right there, and I love that. And I believe that did win Reese's sweet move of the race, and rightfully so. That move deserved to win. So we were seeing a good race, like I said, for second right now. Hingarani was just dominating. Fenhouse, like we had predicted, was running good. He was in second. LeVar was third. Sawalich was back to fourth. Again, not the best performances early in this race for Sawalich. And Venturini was down in fifth, which was also kind of shocking. I figured he would have been maybe just a little bit more competitive. Not saying he was slow by any means, but I figured he would have been probably battling up there for the win. Then you had kind of Tinkle, Moreau, and Kimmel and McZink in their own foursome that were kind of battling out with each other. And then you had the 31, the 98, and the 48 were kind of just out there making laps, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, a couple laps later, the 48 stalled on the front stretch. Now, spoiler alert, Brad is bringing the Ford this week. So I don't know if the 48, I'll say right there, the 48 was on its last legs. That car was old. It's beat up. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised it's still going. I was quite shocked at how fast we actually were at Kansas. I mean, that's what you call a good motor, even in a bad car. That 48 has a good motor, and I hope it didn't expire. He stalled on the front stretch. Brad usually doesn't bring out caution, so if it stalled on the front stretch, something happened. Now, I haven't been in contact with Brad, and also, spoiler alert, even though I don't know why my name is listed on the crew chief list, I am not going to Charlotte. I wish I was going to Charlotte. Trust me, but I am not going to Charlotte. I'm not. I don't know why my name's on the crew chief list, but hey, I'll take it. I haven't gotten in contact with him, so I can't unfortunately tell you guys what had happened. But if he did bring out a legitimate caution on track, that all I'll say is that's not good. That's not good, and I hope that motor didn't blow, because that'll pretty much force Brad to use the Ford for the rest of the year. And he really didn't want to use it for the rest of the year. He kind of wanted to use the Chevrolet on the dirt tracks especially. He does not want to bring that Ford to the dirt tracks. Just doesn't want to get it dirty. They spent so much time getting it ready, they don't want to get it dirty. So they wanted to use the Chevrolet for the dirt tracks and a lot of the short tracks coming up, and leave the Ford to the bigger tracks, like Michigan coming up, maybe even the Glen. Tracks like that. So that sucked to see Brad go out that early. So we were already down to 12 cars. The 42 of Ryan Relate would blow up literally as they came up to the restart. Again, that was his own car under Andy Hillenberg's team. He unfortunately have a parting ways with Last Chance Racing. Andrew Trudell and that team are kind of struggling over there. Roulette lost a lot of money with that team, unfortunately. And he's just trying to build his program back up. And it sucked to see him go with an engine failure, because he was a full race car. But we lost another full race car, so that kind of put us down to 11. The final 11 cars, spoiler alert, would finish the race. We got back going green again. And the 15, like I said, the 15 really is pulling away here. But we knew going into this race there would be no mandatory cautions to change tires and fuel, because it's flat rock. I mean, in general, this race is only 37.5 miles. That's the funny part about Flat Rock Speedway. The track is so small that even on a 150 lap race, you're only going 37.5 miles. So you can easily go that on a tank of fuel, and the tires can easily handle that as well. And that's why I also enjoy these short, I call them short track races, is because you literally don't have to change a set of tires. Now, the problem, though, with that is that if you miss the setup, you're going to have a long night. Or if you don't have a long-run car, you're really going to have a long night. And we did see that as the race ran out. Some cars who didn't have good short-run speed came in the long run. Some cars who had long runs, who had short-run speed, failed in the long run. And I like seeing that happen. We always like seeing that kind of happen in tire wear. There's one thing we love about General Tire. Everybody gives Goodyear a bunch of crap about it, but General Tire always brings a good tire to these races. Very rarely do you see a General Tire actually fail. Fail. I can't say that word for some reason. So shout out to General Tire as well. But yeah, Hingorani's just putting a killing on the field right now. The 28 fell off midway through the race for sure. Venhouse fell back to 5th, and he just kind of stabilized there. He was faster than the rest of the field behind him, but he just couldn't climb back up. And it was really odd because, man, I figured with Shane Huffman as his crew chief and Luke being able to drive these type of bull ring tracks, I figured he really was going to be the car to beat. So when Luke fell down to 5th and stayed there, it was quite shocking. It really was. Venturini, it just was clear after about halfway through the race, he didn't have the car to compete for the win, and the win was going to come from the 15, the 6, or the 18. As the race went on, like I said, cars that fell off in the long run, the 65 and the 69, they fell off hard. I could probably believe maybe they used up their tires because Tim Monroe, shout out to Tim Monroe, for a guy who doesn't have a lot of full race experience, actually ran competitive ahead of both Will Kimmel and Jeffrey Magzink. So shout out to Tim Monroe, man. He's a good guy, and he works hard. He works his ass off. Trust me. I saw it. I saw him change a fuel cell at Kansas. He wasn't happy about it, but he did it. But yeah, then we finally, it looked like that the 18, it's kind of the one thing that we thought would beat them. We talked about it on last week's show. That Sawalich would get beaten by long run speed. Well, ironically enough, he is the guy who won with long run speed. On that second run, which was 50 laps, he had started to close back in on the 15 of Sean Hingorani. And then we had our third and final caution of the day, the 31 of Derek McGrew Jr. spun again. Again, didn't hit anything, but kind of just dented the bumper a little bit, hitting the pavement, and dented the nose, hitting the pavement. And his car was it was just screwed up. It wasn't really damaged badly, but, when you miss some aerodynamics on a short track, it can affect how the car runs. So we knew that the 18 had something for the 15, and this caution was going to help that. Well, right after they went back green, all hell broke loose, literally. The 18 was there and there and there. And, we complimented him at Nashville for not using the bumper. But, boy, Sawalich, he was on a mission. He knows he probably got robbed at Nashville, and he was like, I'm taking this win. I deserve this win after getting robbed at Nashville. And he just moves the 15 out of the way. But you know what? I'm not mad about it because that's classic short track racing. That's the stuff you will see at Bowman Gray. That's the stuff you will see at the Las Vegas Bull Ring. It's just that's natural short track racing. You can't be mad at it. So he moved the 15. The 15 was not happy about it. He tried to full send him back a couple times. But Sawalich, like a veteran actually, I'll say, used a lap car to get in front of him. And once he cleared him, he pulled away. And unfortunately, the 15 could not get back there. And actually, like we had talked about, long run speed, well, the 15 didn't have it. As the night went on, his car got worse. The 6 of LeVar Scott was able to get up to second, but even he could not catch the 18. Got the gap down, I will say. He was about 3 seconds back, but he got the gap down to 1.5. But unfortunately, it was not enough. William Sawalich wins surprisingly. I think this is the most surprising statistic in all the races he's been a part of this season. Wins only his second race of the year, which is quite surprising considering how competitive he's been. Just some bad luck and some bad finishes. Hard to believe his worst finish this year, I think, is 13th, but that was Phoenix. But only his second victory of the year, which in and itself is kind of surprising. You'd think he'd won almost every race this year, but he actually hasn't. So LeVar Scott was second. Great run for him. Probably his best East showing of the entire year. Sean Hingorani, Scott or Hurt Man, third. Billy Venturini, I still say he ran a great race. I hope Billy runs more. Now that he's in race shape, again, I hope Billy runs more than just one of these one-offs. I hope Billy, I don't think he wants to come back for plate races, but imagine Billy Venturini at Bristol. Good God, that would be awesome. I hope it's not just a one-off. It probably is, but man, that would be so cool to see Billy come back for another race. Because, once you get that racing itch, it's hard to just put the fire suit back on hold. Yeah, and the chat, Brennan Poole, former Venturini driver, actually was spotting for Billy Venturini. So that was kind of a cool statistic we learned by some of the media people that were there. The rest of the field, like I said, Luke Fenhaus, I would say 5th place was definitely disappointing for that team and not what they needed for the championship either. Zachary Tinkle with another 6th place finish. Seems like that's where he usually finishes in these races. Tim Monroe, very solid 7th place. Will Kimmel, he posted on Facebook. He was not very proud of that finish. They missed the setup real bad, but with no guaranteed pit stops to really change stuff, he just had to deal with what he had, and it was unfortunately a struggle. Megzink, he posted that he kind of ran the tires off the car in the first run, and with no guaranteed tire changes, all he could do was just the best he could. But by the end of the race, he had no rear tires left. McGrew Jr., a couple of cautions didn't help him, but still a top 10 finish. And Dale Shear, just glad Dale isn't starting parking after a rough two races. For Dale Shear, I'm glad he was able to run the whole race in the last 2, because I know he didn't want to start and park. He only started and parked Dover because he realized he would be too slow. That's why he started and parked Dover. He wanted to run the whole race, but he realized very quickly he was going to be too slow, didn't want to get run over and bring out a yellow. So just park it, take the money, get to the next one. So I'm glad that Dale's finally getting to run some races. And then, of course, we had Ryan Roulette in 12th. The 12 car, by the way, and the funny part of this, the 12 car started 12th and finished 12th. If only he could have completed 12 laps. But, hey, that's kind of funny. Brad Smith finished 13th. Like I said, I hope everything's okay with the Chevrolet, but could be something went wrong. Nate Moeller, 14th. Dallas Freeway, 15th. And Jeff Smith, 16th. Our championship standings look like this, and it's not the best outlook for the rest of the field right now. William Sawalich currently leads the E-Series championship by 13 points over Luke Fenhaus and 22 points over Sean Hingorani. And really the only other East championship contender, LeVar Scott, 23 points behind. But you got to remember, this was the last standalone East race of 2023. The rest of the year, we will have over 25 cars each for the final 4 East races. With the way the entry lists have been this year, at minimum, we will have over 25 cars for the final 4 East combo races. And with that amount of changing, I would not put the 18 out in the slightest. Do I think Hingorani and Scott are probably too far back at this point? Yes, but I do think Luke Fenhaus still has a shot at it. As long as he can stay within 15 points, I would say he's got a shot at it. Tracks like Iowa's projected to get almost 30. Bristol might have almost 40 with how many entries are expected. So anything can happen. And the Joe Gibbs cars have had issues at Iowa in the past. Zachary Tinkle's 5th in points. Tim Monroe, looks like Tim Monroe's at this point, I don't see why he wouldn't go for the East Series points. He's already 6th. He's ran all the races. You might as well just put him in the car for the other races if it's not already sold. Jake Finch, unfortunately, is out of the championship by missing this race, so that sucks. Dale Shear is 8th. Brad Smith is 9th. They are kind of the last of the full-time East guys right now. It's unclear whether Rita is going to return. She's got no real return date. I know the officials were not the happiest with her after Nashville, so I'm not sure when we will see Rita in a car again. And then, of course, everybody else in the field are just part-timers in the E-Series. Overall, I thought the race was good. I'm not going to call it bad at all. Definitely the best East standalone race of 2023. That's for sure. We can easily call this, and I knew it was. Starting off the year, the E-Series, this was going to be their best standalone race. So glad to say some positive things about the E-Series, because the first 3 were not the best. And I try to be as positive as I can, but they were not the best. This race was good. This race, not great, but good. A very, very solid good. Yeah, I guess you could say Dover was good too. Just again, more cars. That is what we need. But it's hard to ask, because in this day and age, it's just better to run the main series than the East division. The East series has got to have that special factor, when instead the main series, they have that special factor. But yeah, that's the points championship. Iowa, the next East race, will be a lot of fun. I'm going to be there, of course. You guys know I'll be there. And yeah, that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll really get a good outlook at what Sawalich has at Iowa, because that's going to bring a lot of competitive entries, that's for sure. So So now we transform into the main series division part of the show, previewing the ARCA Menards series at Charlotte. Yes, Charlotte Motor Speedway, the home base for a lot of these ARCA teams. In particular, fast track racing, Andy Hillenberg. They can literally see Charlotte from their shop. That is how close they are. Darrell Waltrip always used to brag about having the closest race shop to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Andy Hillenberg, in reality, actually has the closest shop. They've actually driven race cars to the track from Andy's shop. That's how close his shop is. So that's how close Andy Hillenberg's shop is. And the one thing that we have been praising the main division for this season is car counts. Every single race this season has had a higher car count than it did last year. Maybe Phoenix didn't, but they still had an amazing car count nonetheless. But this year, we're continuing that trend. 29 cars versus 26 last year, and that's the best news to hear. And looking at the entry list, I don't see many starting parks. Yes, Phoenix, 32 is still a very solid field size. It still put on a great race. I wish we had more than 39, but 32 was still a great field. Let's not sugarcoat that either. It was a great race. But 29 cars and very, very few starting parks. That's the most important thing looking at this entry list. Like I like to do in these ARCA entry lists, we're going to go by every individual car. The 2 of Andres Perez de Lara, like we kind of figured. Jack Wood in the 6. Sean Corr, not sure if he'll bring the Ford. I mean, that car was kind of destroyed at Kansas. He's listed in a Chevrolet. Ed Pompa's back for Andy Hillenberg. Stephanie Moyer is back for Andy Hillenberg. We got both Pizza Man entered in this race. The first one, Brayton Laster, in the 12. Dean Thompson in his couple of starts for Venturini this season. He'll be in the 15. Taylor Gray and Tricon will be back. Same car, of course, that they ran at Kansas. 17 for Tricon. Connor Mosak, kind of the default driver. We didn't really know who was going to drive the 18 this season in the big track races, but it looks like Connor Mosak is now the official default driver, which is still not a bad choice. He needs the experience, so that's a good choice by them. Jesse Love, of course, in the 20. Gus Dean is back in the 25. Malcolm himself, Frankie Muniz, in the 30, of course. Stephen Light. Yes, that's a name you guys might have heard in a while. Yes, that's the same Stephen Light who drove for MBM Motorsports. The same Stephen Light who drove for JD Motorsports. The same Stephen Light who won that Busch race for Robert Yates over 15 years ago. He's still going. Surprisingly, he's only 35. He'll be in the 31 for the Rise Motorsports, and I'm actually really excited about this entry. Steven, he really gets the most out of cars that you wouldn't expect him to get the most out of it. And I'm quite excited to see what he can do. That 31's got a good setup in it. It's got a good crew chief who really knows what he's doing. And with the right driver, I said that car could run well. And I'm really curious to see what that 31 can do this weekend. They've got the new nose on the car, new rear bumper on the car. I'm really curious. I'm not saying they're going to win, but it would not shock me if they run top 10. Stephen Light's a really, really good driver. Of course, we got Christian Rose in the 32, Greg Van Elst in the 35, Tony Cosentino in the 45, good old Brad Smith in the Ford, like I said. So it looks like Brad's running the Ford, and he wanted to run the Ford at the big tracks. So this also wasn't a shocker. Again, I'm not the crew chief, even though I'm listed on there. But hey, I thank Brad Ford anyway. Tony Breidinger is back in the 55 again with Rootley on the car. John Garrett, Scott Melton, Cody Coughlin. Great to see Cody back again. Other pizza man, Andy Jankowiak. Great to see him back. Brian Dowsett in the 75 this time. More than likely the same car they used at Talladega. The 93 of Caleb Costner and the 97 of Grant Enfinger, kind of the oddball entry here. We have seen Enfinger run some random ARCA races. He was in the Toledo race last year in a second car for Jeff McClure that came from GMS. And, we know CR7 Motorsports, they're a solid team. And I'm really curious to see. You got an A-plus driver in Grant Enfinger, but not an A-plus team in CR7. I would say CR7's a solid B-plus team. So I am actually, I can't wait to see what he's going to do in that car. You have an A+ driver with a B+ team, and I want to see what he can do with it. I would say Enfinger, I'm not going to say he's going to be the car to beat, but I'm excited to see what that 97 can do this weekend. More than likely they're going to give him a fresh Ilmore to get as much speed as possible. And then the 01, which has CJ McLaughlin in the car. Now, it's interesting. We talked about maybe CJ running this race to get some extra experience. I don't know if he's ran Charlotte before. But he did start and park Dover when we thought he was going to run the whole race, and the car was completely unsponsored despite having a sponsor SciAps listed. I could see this being one of the few exceptions, though. I mean, why would you run the car just for a start and park, especially if you're not going to push it that hard? So I think the 01's going to run the whole race. I think all the way it looks, all 4 Andy Hillenberg cars will be running the whole race, and this would probably be one of the few times that they can actually do that, considering their home base is literally 3 minutes, probably less than that, from the track itself. Of course, we got the 03 of Alex Clubb, and then the 06 of AJ Moyer again. And out of all these cars, guys, I don't see any possible starting parks. The 06, we know he's going to go the whole race. AJ's, he runs the whole race. We know Alex Clubb's going to go the whole race. Hopefully they have better luck than they did last year with Josh White crashing out on lap 3. CJ might be the only one I could see start and parking, but even then, if he's going to pay for the ride, I don't see why he would start and park. I could see him running the whole distance. So, I mean, looking at this whole entry list, I don't see any start and parks. So you're saying that we could probably have, 29 full race cars? Fantastic. Now, some surprises on this entry list, like what we're seeing in the chat. No Tim Richmond. It is possible that the Talladega crash, they destroyed their Daytona car. Their Talladega car was crashed. David Richmond's only got so much money he can spend. So, unfortunately, they might have taken a back burner on that. It's unclear if that team will even be back next year, honestly. I hope they are, but Tim is not, I don't know, Tim just kind of, it's not like he has no passion. He does, but Tim's not really focused on his racing career right now. And Mandy Chick, yeah, that one's kind of surprising too, but she did go to Kansas, remember, unsponsored. So at the end of the day, sponsorship is kind of everything, especially in this series. So with no sponsorship, it's not shocking that they can't go to Charlotte. Remember, her team's not based in Charlotte. She's a Midwestern team, right? Aren't they based in the Midwest? So it makes sense that they would run Kansas, but maybe going all the way to Charlotte's just too much of a trip for them. They will probably be at Iowa, but I'm not surprised that they're not in Charlotte. But still, 29 cars compared to 26 last year. Yeah, they're based in DeSoto, Kansas. So it makes sense that, they would run Midwest tracks, probably like Elko, Berlin, Iowa, Kansas, Toledo, all those Midwestern tracks. Probably Mid-Ohio as well if they want to get her some road course experience. But tracks like Charlotte are just too far away. Yes and no, it's too far away. If they had the sponsorship, they'd probably go. Put it like that. So, but I think it's going to be a really, really good race. Last year's Charlotte race was incredible. I said it was one of the best races of the year. It's because we had the 81 of Brandon Jones. When he had his 5-race deal in the 81 car, you had the strong 18 car of Drew Dollar, who did what Drew Dollar does best. He crashed out, I think, in the first 20 laps in his last start for the 18. I think was that Drew Dollar's last appearance in NASCAR, period? Is that correct or not? Can anyone in the chat correct me on that? Was that the last appearance of Drew Dollar? If so, great. But was that actually the last appearance of him? Yeah, it was. Wow. Well, good. We don't miss him. we don't miss Drew Dollar. We don't. But the race was fantastic. Raja's car last year was so loose. He was flying that car off the corner every single time. The 2 car, he hit the wall, still took the lead. The 81 at the end of the day, it came down to experience. Brandon Jones, using his experience last year, he won that race. But the race last year was incredible. Great racing all throughout the field. We even had Brad Smith, who was running 8 seconds a lap off the pace. Almost got parked like 3 times and still finished the race. Gotta love those ARCA officials being so kind to us. Even though they were dealing with an engine issue. But yeah, last year's race was great. And looking at this field, once again, guys, I can't predict the winner. But looking at overall choices, legitimate winning contenders for this race: Andres Perez de Lara, Jack Wood, Dean Thompson, Connor Mosack, Jesse Love, Gus Dean. We'll throw in Frankie Muniz. We'll throw in Christian Rose, throw in Greg Van Alst, Cody Coughlin, and Grant Enfinger. I mean, you got over 10 guys that can legitimately, I would say, depending on how this race goes, have a chance at this race. And that's awesome. Because even a couple years ago, I think the least this race got, I believe, was 2021 when we only had 23. So for all the people, again, for all the people who say that this series is dying, where's your proof? Where's your proof? I understand the East Series is not doing very well. The West Series, they're only struggling because of the real world issues. It's legitimately just too expensive to run a West team without sufficient money. But the main series is doing phenomenal. The best it's done really since 2017. Fields have been up almost every race this season. And honestly, I think we'll see very few races for the rest of the year that actually have lower car counts than the previous year. And this is going to be one of those races where it's hard to pick a winner. I'm going to go with Grant Enfinger as my underdog pick just because he is driving for a team that I would say is an underdog team. Again, A+ driver, B+ team. It's a weird dynamic. So I'm going to take Grant Enfinger as my underdog pick. And for my main pick to win the race, I am going to go I'm actually going to go with Taylor Gray. I'm going to go with Taylor Gray and Tricon winning this one. And Grant Enfinger is my underdog pick. But I don't see any starting parks in the field. And that is the best, probably the best thing I could really say. Because at this race, I don't want to see starting parks in any race, but I know they will try to run the whole distance. And Brad, they've been having some clutch issues on the Ford, but obviously having this much time since the last time he ran the Ford to fix the car, hopefully they've gotten those issues fixed and they'll have no problems. I hope the 0-1 runs the whole race. I hope it doesn't junk it. You also need to know that the last time CJ McLaughlin, I believe, attempted an ARCA race was with Our Motorsports in the 09 car, like it was 2019, and he crashed the car in practice, and they didn't have a backup car, so he had to withdraw from that race. I think that car was actually purchased. I think that car was purchased by Andy Jankowiak. I don't know if that's the same car. Someone find out if that's the exact same car that Our ran, just with a different body on it. That'd be a cool chassis story right there. But yeah, going through the entry blank here, it's the same payout style that Kansas does. Comparing the entry lists, first place $10,000 with all the contingency awards that ARCA offers. The possible top prize money is $19,125 for first. Second place $8,700 and third place $5,400. The one thing I will say about ARCA payouts, if we're going to have these payouts, fine. But I do think either for Daytona or the season finale race, we need to have a minimum $50,000 winning purse. That's the one thing I'll say. Or $100,000 winning purse. And have second place be 50, third place be 25, and last place be $10,000. If we had something like that in the ARCA series for a season finale race, you would get some pretty big car counts for that one. Trust me. We don't need – I would love those types of payouts for every race, but even if we had one race out of the year for ARCA that had that kind of a payout, you would see 30 car fields. You would. But yeah, first place, $10,000. Last place with 29 cars entered is $1,400. Like I said, the usual stuff we see on these bigger track entry lists. Obviously, flow racing bonus. We'll get first through 20th, we'll get an extra $200. So for some of those teams, that's kind of a extra bonus. But yeah, so it should be a fun race. The cars that I would expect to run for the win, again, we have 11 possible contenders, but I would say the cars that you're going to have to beat for this win, we'll throw in the 97 because we know Grant Enfinger's awesome. Dean Thompson, because he really showed some speed at Kansas. Taylor Gray, and Jesse Love. Now, Jesse, we did not predict him to win Kansas. Not at all. And I was pleasantly shocked. pleasantly shocked that Jesse was as competitive as he was at Kansas. Now, that also shouldn't be that shocking. He was driving the exact same car that Corey Heim won that previous year. So, are we underestimating Jesse Love again? Could he win the entire? Could he lead the entire race and win again? Yes, but we'll find out. The point standings coming into this race, starting to get a big outlook on the championship right now. Jesse Love is first. Frankie Muniz is second. Jack Wood is third, but he's not full year. Greg Van Alst is fourth, but he is 17 points behind. Andres Perez de Lara, the other guy that we thought really had a chance at the championship. It's looking like every day that Daytona race where he had to run the one practice lap is hurting him because he's still 22 points behind. Otherwise, even if he would have had like a mid-pack finish at Daytona, like 20th, he would be, I don't think he'd be leading the points, but he'd be like 5 points out of the championship. Tony Cosentino, who's still running the whole season, he's sixth. Christian Rose is seventh. Sean Corr is eighth in points, but he's not full-time. Tony Breininger is ninth, but she's not full-time. John Garrett's down in 10th. The other full-timers, AJ Moyer is down in 12th. Brad Smith is down in 15th. Those are the remaining full-time drivers in points. Right now, we only have the one driver who has completed the most laps this season. And this is actually kind of a funny statistic. Off the top of your heads right now in the chat, who has actually completed the most ARCA laps in 2023? I want to hear. See who can name the top two who have completed the top three. We'll go with the top three. I guarantee you, I want to see someone get this right. The top three who have ran the most laps this year. Give you guys a couple seconds because I think the answers are going to shock you of who's ran the most laps this year. It's not Frankie Muniz. It's not Greg. That Talladega crash really hurt him. It's not Greg. A couple more seconds here because it's going to be fun. Not Jack Wood. It's not Jack Wood. Remember that Phoenix crash. All right, well, I'll tell you guys. It's not Brad. It's not Mandy. I'll tell you guys. The person who has run the most ARCA laps this season, he talked about wanting to get experience. Well, he has gotten the most. Frankie Muniz has actually ran the most laps this year. I guess it was Frankie. I'm sorry, Sir Rockstein. You got it right. I'm sorry. He was first. Tony Cosentino. Shout out to Tony Cosentino and that family-owned operation. He was second, and Tony Breidinger has run the third. Those are the three drivers who have run the most laps this season. That is a surprising statistic, but that's also what consistency and being safe gets you. And if Tony Breidinger had not crashed out at Phoenix, she would probably just be behind Muniz in terms of that lap count. But yeah, how about that? I mean, championship contenders. Jesse Love, he has even completed the top 5 most laps. Greg Van Alst, I think, has completed the 5th most laps, but it's just really surprising. But yeah, that's kind of a funny statistic. So shout out to those three. And yeah, shout out to Tony Breidinger. I hope she does a lot better than she did in this race last year at Charlotte. Didn't show a lot of speed overall. Hope she does better as well. And Tony Cosentino, for a team that we didn't know how they would do, a family-owned operation, it's kind of hard to do in this day in ARCA without sufficient sponsorship. But I will say so far that team has done very well for themselves. So, and again, this race tomorrow is, like I said, it's tomorrow. It's literally tomorrow. I think it's after all the qualifying stuff. 5 o'clock? Not the latest ARCA race, but I believe it's live on FS1. And yeah, so anyone can really watch this race. I hope you guys tune into it. It's going to be a good one. I can tell you it's going to be going. I think all of the Charlotte races this weekend will be good. Charlotte is it's a great track. Overall, Charlotte is a great track for ARCA cars, trucks, Xfinity, and it's one of the few tracks where the next gens can really even shine as well. So I think we're in overall, I think we're going to have a great weekend of races, and I'm excited for that as well. Molten Rage, you can't watch because you're going to be doing graduation rehearsals. Congratulations, bud, for graduating, man. People don't realize how big of an accomplishment that is. Graduating high school is a huge accomplishment. So shout out to anyone who's graduated high school. It's not, trust me, in this day and age, it's not as easy as it looks. It really isn't. But yeah, enjoy the race tomorrow, guys. We'll catch y'all. I want to do this show on Tuesdays. That was my original plan. I want to do this show on Tuesdays, but for 2 weeks now, they haven't got the entry list out until Wednesday. And I don't want to do the show on Wednesday because there's a lot of podcasts going on at the same time. And I don't think we'd get as big of an audience, if that makes sense. So that's why I moved it to Thursday. But it sucks because I want to do the show on Tuesday, but we can't get the entry list out quick enough. So I don't know. It is what it is, guys. Thank you again for joining me on your Thursday night. Again, follow me on Start and Park Car on Twitter just for all the Twitter updates. But yeah, watch the race tomorrow, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun, and enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend. Hope you guys have a fun weekend like I will. So we'll catch y'all next week for Backmarker Battles and the ARC Racing Podcast. I've been Colby Evans, Start and Park Car. It's time for me to go get some dinner, and I'm signing off. So long, guys.